Morning everyone, welcome to today's PRINCE2 Project Management in 30 Minutes webinar. My name's Etty, I'm a part of the marketing team here at ILX. We'll give it another minute or two for a few people more to join us, because I know there's still people kind of filtering in. And then I'll be handing you over to Karen here, who is our expert PRINCE2 Project Management trainer. She's going to be taking you through the course today. Yeah, just giving you a great overview of what you might learn if you were to join one of our courses. So before we progress into the full webinar, there's just a couple of housekeeping bits that I need to run through. So you'll notice you've all come in muted. I don't think you have the option to unmute yourself, but if you do, please don't. It just makes things a lot smoother for everyone so we can hear Karen nice and clearly throughout. If you do have any questions as we go through, we will be doing a Q&A session at the end. So you have a little question box available to you. If you just pop any questions in there, if there's sort of technical issues you can't see, you can't hear, I can sort of sort those out in the background. Otherwise, if they're about the content that we're talking about, Karen will be answering all of those at the end. The webinar is being recorded, so you'll be receiving a follow-up email tomorrow with a link to that over on YouTube, and then you're free to watch it back, share with colleagues if you think they will find it useful. We also like to say give us a follow on social media. We're active on LinkedIn, Instagram and Facebook, so you can give us a follow over there, and then you'll hear about any other sort of upcoming webinar sessions we've got, any sales, discounts that are going on, all of that kind of good stuff. And then finally, today's session will be lasting about 30 minutes, as the title suggests, and then we will be going into the Q&A. So I will hand you over to Karen now, and yeah.
Okay, thanks, Etty. Okay, so welcome everybody. So as Etty said, I'm Karen Swanston. So I've been a trainer of PRINCE2 since 2008. So I'm going to step you through some things today to think about how easy it can be to learn PRINCE2. If we break it down into small chunks, if we start to look at some helpful hints and some helpful tips to make it a bit easier. Okay. And so the learning part of this will take about 30 minutes, and then after that we will have, as Etty said, a question and answer session where I will do my best to answer as many questions as possible. Okay, so here goes. Now, first of all, I want to start off with having a little bit of an understanding of where are we coming from as far as your knowledge of PRINCE2 or project management already. So I just want to launch this poll. So this first one that we're wanting to have a look at, it says, what is your current experience with project management? So are we new into project management? So is this kind of like a bit of a flavour of it, a bit of a starter of it? Have you already got a project management qualification, but maybe not PRINCE2, because there are other project management qualifications out there as well? Are you already a qualified PRINCE2 foundation practitioner person, maybe from previous versions that's out there? Or are you up to date with the current version of PRINCE2 project management? Okay, so if you can please vote now, that would be really good. All right, thank you. All right. Last couple of votes coming through now. All right, so I'm going to end the poll. All right, so as far as the people joining today, the majority, a good 75% of people are new into project management. And I would say that this is a really good starter, so you get a bit of a flavour of what this is, absolutely. Some people have got other project management qualifications. Some people have got previous PRINCE2 qualification, or a couple of you have got the current one as well. Okay, so, but the majority very much new into project management. Okay, now then, let's close that down. Okay, and let's have a look at what this is about then. So first of all, let's start off with the definition of a project. So PRINCE2 project management describes a project as a temporary organisation that's created for the purpose of delivering one or more business product according to an agreed business case. Now, even though that's just one small definition, there's actually a real lot of information within there. One of the first things to know is about it being temporary. So the project is doing something, and once the project's done what it needs to do, the project will close down. So it's always there in a temporary capacity. So the people that's working on the project are always there in a temporary capacity. The purpose of doing this is that they're going to be delivering one or more business product. So they're going to be creating something, they're going to be upgrading something to actually enable the business to bring about a change. And they're doing all of this according to an agreed business case. So the business case is going to look at the justification for the investment in the project. So they'll be looking at, well, what is the investment that the organisation is making? What is the benefits that's going to come out of the other side of the project to work out that it is actually worth doing? So key thing from that, the project is temporary, it's delivering one or more business product according to an agreed business case. So as we've just seen there, the project is producing products, specialist products. At the end of the day, it's all just stuff, and that could be new stuff, it could be upgraded stuff. But every project is unique and different, hence why we refer to specialist products. So this is something that's special to your project. Once the project has produced those products, they then hand them over into business as usual for the users to use. So the specialist products are referred to as an output from the project. And when the users start to use these new products, in business as usual, things will start to change. So if these new products could be some new procedures, as the users are using the new procedures, they're doing things differently. If it's a new IT system, a new office block, a new layout, some new online procedures, when they are starting to use the new things from the project, business as usual will then start to see the change. And the change is what's referred to as an outcome. Now, with any sort of change, there are always two sides to a change. There's the positive side, but we also need to acknowledge that there's a negative side as well. The positive side is what we refer to as a benefit. The negative side is a disbenefit. So when we're looking at the justification for the investment in the project, we need to look at both the positives and the negative effect of doing this project. Now, we talked about how we can make it easier to learn PRINCE2. One of the things that we need to look at is the terminology. So here we've got the terminology around outputs and outcomes. But if you notice, the output has got the letter P in there to help us remember that that's about a product. Outcome has got the letter C in there, and that might help us to remember that's about the change in the business. And it's a real simple things like that that can just make it a little bit easier to learn. Now, PRINCE2 Project Management is made up of 5 integrated elements of principles, practices, processes, the project context, and people sitting right in the centre. Now, the principles are the guiding obligations that must be applied. These are like the underlying rules that we're going to be following for every PRINCE2 project. Now, the principles, once we've learned the principles, these are things that would come naturally. They would be things that you would automatically do, and it would feel weird if you're not having the principles in place. So as an example, if we was preparing a meal, then washing our hands before we start touching any of the food is something that we learned at one point in our lives, and now it's something that we just do automatically. So that's a little bit like a principle. Once we've learned it, it's something that will just automatically be there. Now, the practices, it says that are addressed continually throughout the project. The 7 practices are describing different aspects of project management that will be needed in different parts of the project. Again, if we was using the example of preparing a meal, for a meal, we would need different ingredients. So if we are making a cottage pie, for example, we're going to need ingredients for the base, we're going to need ingredients like potatoes and things for the top of the cottage pie. But those ingredients are going to evolve and change, just like the practices do in PRINCE2 Project Management. They evolve and change. So the potatoes that we buy from the supermarket, we're not just going to tip on top of the base and stick it in the oven. They need to be peeled and washed and chopped and boiled. So that product of the potatoes, that ingredient, will evolve and change. So the practices are a bit like ingredients. The principles are a bit like the rules of washing your hands first. The processes, the 7 processes, are a stepwise progression through the project, from right at the beginning of the project of getting started, right to the end of the project of closing it down. And the processes give us the step-by-step of what to do. Now, if we was making a cottage pie, if you'd never made a cottage pie before, then you might look to a recipe to help. And the processes are just like recipes. They step you through what to do, how to use the practices, how to use the principles. So the processes will step you through from beginning to end on the project. Now, the project context is thinking about the environment that this project is within. So using the cottage pie example, is this a cottage pie for one? In which case you could follow the recipe, but you could throw other things into there as well and it wouldn't matter. But if this is a cottage pie for the family, then we know people have awkward requirements. So you might have to change the recipe a little bit because of the people that's actually going to be eating this cottage pie. But if you are a manufacturer of cottage pie, you need to make sure that it's created in a consistent way. So when we're thinking about the project context, it's think about, well, what is the environment that we're doing this project within? And how do I need to amend PRINCE2 to make it fit that environment? What aspects can we change? Things like terminology, the language that's used. Often organizations might have their own terminology to use. But sitting right in the center of this diagram is the people. And projects need people to do any of this. So we want to be thinking about, have we got people with the right skills? Have they got the right support in place? What kind of motivations can we build into the project? And what relationships are maybe already existing or relationships that we need to build on? So PRINCE2 Project Management made up of these 5 integrated elements. So the first one we talked about there was the principles. Now there are 7 principles that must all be applied for it to be a PRINCE2 project. This is what I referred to as far as washing your hands before you touch the ingredients. Now the first principle we've got here is ensure continued business justification. Now this is relating back to the business case. And it's making sure that before we start the project that we have considered whether this looks like it's a worthwhile project. Have we got the justification to actually do the project? But we need to make sure that's updated at key points throughout the project. Because even though we've got the justification at the beginning of the project, things can change as we're working in the project. So we want to make sure that that justification remains throughout. Learn from experience. So look at what we've done before, look at what other people have done before, and think about how we can take on some of the good things and not repeat some of the negative things that may have happened previously. But also learn as we are going through the project so we can pass on our lessons to the next projects coming along. Define roles, responsibilities, relationships, thinking about the people that's needed on the project, but also thinking about the people who are going to be the users of the products as well, making sure they're represented in the project. Manage by stages. Rather than looking at the project as a whole, we want to think about, do we need to break this project down into smaller chunks to make it easier to manage, easier to work with? Manage by exception is the delegation downwards between the management levels, the tolerances that they can work within, but also about having escalation procedures in place if necessary and reporting upwards throughout the project. Focus on products, making sure we understand what the end product is to start with. And then we can start to think about what are all of the other products that's needed. So if the end product is a cottage pie, then focus on products is making sure we understand that, and then we can think about all of the other products that are needed to actually make that cottage pie. And finishing off, tailor to suit the project. So thinking about how PRINCE2 might need to be tailored for the environment you're working within. Now, the practices, we said that these are going to evolve and change as we're going through the project. So we've got business case, organisation, plans, quality, risk, issues and progress. So all of these practices are going to be needed throughout the project, but they might change as we're going along. Now, with the 7 processes, these light blue boxes are all of our processes. Now, before we get into the first process of starting up a project, we can see that the commissioning, the business layer, are the people who actually instigate the project. They give out a mandate, which could be a fantastic document, it could be an email, it could also just be a conversation coming out of a meeting, asking you to look at something, to investigate, to think about a project. So the mandate is the trigger to come into the very first process of starting up a project. So looking at starting up a project, all of the processes in PRINCE2 Project Management have an overview diagram similar to this, where all of those blue boxes are the activities that need to be done during that process. So the mandate is the trigger to come into starting up a project, where we will appoint the executive and the project manager. The executive is the person in charge of the project board. The project manager will then be looking after the day-to-day running of the project. As well as appointing the executive and project manager, we need to assess previous lessons. So thinking about the principle, learn from experience. Prepare the outline business case to make sure that what we are going into looks like it's going to work, making sure we've got that justification. Appoint the project management team. So think about the other people that's needed to actually support this project, to get involved in this project. Selecting the project approach is thinking about how are we actually going to deliver the project? Can we do this by upgrading something we've already got? Do we need to have something new implemented into the business? Also, is this a project we can do in-house ourselves? Do we need to outsource? Do we need to go to external suppliers, for example? So the project approach is thinking about how are we going to actually deliver the project itself. And all of this knowledge that we now know about the project will then come into the project brief. So assembling the project brief, this is a little bit like a folder that's holding all the information together at this point. And that project brief will need to be presented to the project board for approval. But before we go to the project board, we would first of all create a plan of the work that we are wanting to do in the initiation stage. So once we've created the plan for the initiation stage and assembled the project brief, we are now ready to go to the project board, asking for the authorization to go into the initiation stage. Now, during the starting up a project process, there are a number of practices that we will be looking at here. One of them is the organisation practice. So this is thinking about the people, supporting the principle, define roles, responsibilities and relationships. So we've got the commissioning business layer at the top, followed by the project board, who will be directing the project. The project manager, who's managing the day-to-day running of the project on behalf of the project board. And the team manager looking after the delivering level, delivering the specialist products. Now, at the right-hand side of this diagram, we can see the words of the project management team that's purely going across the project board, project manager and team manager. Now, again, one thing that's quite easy to help to remember around the project management team is that this can be abbreviated into PMT. And PMT has got 3 letters, and there are 3 levels of management in the project management team. So the commissioning layer is not part of the project management team. It is part of the overall organisation, but having PMT flagged up for project management team will help us to remember that there are 3 letters and 3 levels of management. We also touch on the business case practice, because in starting up a project, we're going to create the outline business case, which is the first version. Now, supporting the principle of continued business justification, we want to make sure we've got updated versions of the business case. So as part of the development of the business case to start with, in pre-project, in starting up a project, we create the outline business case. That goes for approval to be checked by the project board. As we move into the initiation stage, we're then going to create the full detailed business case. Again, that needs to be checked and approved. But then as we are going through the project, as we're coming towards the end of a stage and starting to plan the next stage that we want to go into, the business case would then be updated to reflect any changes that are happening on the project, to make sure we've still got that justification. At any point, if the business case is not showing the justification for the investment, then it needs to be considered should the project be closed down. So coming out of starting up a project, we've got the project brief, we've got the plan for the initiation stage, and we are then presenting that to the project board. Now, the directing a project process is where the project board make all of their decisions. So authorise initiation is the first decision that they will be making. So if the project board give us the authorisation to move into the initiation stage, the first process we will then move into is initiating a project. So with initiating a project, again, lots of blue boxes here with the activities that we need to do. One of the first things is to agree the tailoring requirements. So thinking about, is there any organisational policies, procedures that we need to take on board? Thinking about the language, the terminology to use. We then come down to agree the management approaches. Now, the management approaches are really like the procedures for different areas. So communication management approach, what's the procedures? Who do we need to communicate? Risk management approach, what's the procedures of how to identify, assess risks? So we have 9 management approaches altogether. So this is making sure we've got the foundations in place regarding these procedures before we move ahead into the rest of the project. After we've agreed the management approaches, we then come down and prepare the project plan, which will be a high-level view of everything that we're going to be doing on the project. As part of preparing the project plan, we'll also be thinking about project controls, such as what tolerances do we need to work within? Where do the stage boundaries need to fall within the project? What kind of reporting is needed throughout the project? Once the project plan is created, that will give us an estimate for the timescales and the costings for the project. And that will enable us to then prepare the full detailed business case, basing the time and cost information from what the project plan has gave us. Now, one of the final things we do in initiating a project is assembling the project initiation documentation, otherwise referred to as the PID. Now, this is going to be, like, again, a bit like a folder holding all of this information together. The PID is referred to as the contract on the project, the contract as to what are we doing on the project. Now, that does need to go to the project board to directing a project for approval. But before we'd go to the project board for approval, we would first of all go into managing a stage boundary to plan the next stage, so the next pieces of work that we're needing to do. Now, again, in initiating a project, there's various practices that are going to be used here. One of them is the risk practice. So looking at what is the definition of a risk is something that is uncertain, an uncertain event or set of events that, should it occur, will have an effect on the achievement of our objectives. So if a risk is something that's uncertain, that uncertainty could have a positive or a negative effect on our objectives. But words to look out for to help spot risks are may, might, and could. So risk is something that may happen, it might happen, it could happen. Whereas if we look at the definition of an issue is an event relevant to the project that requires management consideration, but it's something that has happened, or it will happen, and it was not planned. So as we're looking at a risk, we said to look out for the words may, might, could. As we're looking at an issue here, picking up on the word of has or will help us to understand there's no uncertainty with it. It's an issue rather than a risk. And that brings us on to the second poll for today. So with this second poll, this is asking about a risk. Which of the following, so we've got a few options here, which of the following is a risk? So the first one talks about there will be a delay to the project. There has been a delay to the project. There could be a delay to the project. So which of those do we think is a risk? Okay, let me reveal the answers. Okay, so everybody has gone with the third option. There could be a delay to the project, and hopefully picking up on the word could there has really highlighted about how just picking up on keywords can make it a lot easier for us to learn about what is a risk or what is an issue. Yeah. So there could be a delay to the project is describing something that's uncertain. Okay. Now, one of the other practices that we are using is the quality practice, and this is supporting the principle of focus on products. So we want to have a management product, a document, as a project product description, which is describing the project product, the end product. And this will include the user's quality expectations. So here we've got Karen's having a new car, hopefully. So we want it to have a fast car, a new car that's a bit flashy. But all of those user quality expectations, different people might interpret in a different way. To go alongside the user quality expectations, then we need acceptance criteria that will be measurable. So there's no arguing. Everybody knows exactly what would be acceptable. So doing 0 to 60 in 3 seconds might be slightly over exaggerating the speed side of it there. A new car, anything up to 2 years old. Now we're starting to bring in some tolerance here. Up to 2 years old is giving us a range to aim for. Now a flashy car can be quite hard to get into a measurable definition. But if we have like a table of what is the top 10 most desirable cars in a magazine on a website, if we make reference to that magazine, we can then compare against it. So we have a project product description describing the end product, the project product. But then once we've focused on what the end product is, we then need to think about what are the individual products that's needed. And we would need a product description for those individual products, describing the specific criteria and specification for those products. The plans practice is also used in initiating a project to create the project plan. But this also brings in quality, thinking about, well, what are the products that we need? Let's write the product descriptions for those products. Let's look at the estimates for the timescales and the costings for all of the different products and activities. We'd also pencil in where the stage boundaries want to be. And that time and cost information from the project plan will allow us to update the business case. So as we're coming out of initiating a project, one of the key things here is the PID, the project initiation documentation. But before we go to the project board, we would first of all come across into managing a stage boundary to create the stage plan for the work that we're wanting to do next. So we can see the project plan has been broken down into stages, and a stage plan is more detailed than the project plan. So we look to the project plan for some guidance, but we then break those products down into more detailed products. We need to write product descriptions as soon as we've identified products. We want to think about the estimates for the timescales and the costings, which will then give us an overall time and cost for doing that stage. Now that stage plan, along with the PID, needs to go to the project board for approval. So we'd go up to directing a project, first of all asking them to authorise the project by them authorising the PID. If they say yes, then we can present the stage plan and ask them to authorise the stage. If the project board gives us the approval, the authorisation, we then come down into controlling the stage. And this is where the project manager will look after the day-to-day running of that particular stage. One of the first things they'll be doing is giving out a work package to the team manager who carries out their work in managing product delivery. Now, when the team manager receives the work package, they could create a team plan to show how that work in that work package can actually be done. A team plan is optional. It depends on the complexity of the work in the work package. But as the teams are doing the work and the team manager is looking at the progress in managing project delivery, the progress around that work package, they will need to keep the project manager up to date with progress. So the team manager will send a checkpoint report to the project manager, who will receive that in control in the stage. And the project manager can then see the progress that's been made of that stage. So this brings in the progress practice. So the different levels of management all need to make sure that they are getting progress updates from the lower levels of management. So the team manager will send a checkpoint report to project manager. The project manager will send a highlight report to the project board. And the project board will need to keep the business layer, the commissioning layer up to date. So they will be sending on progress status reports. But looking at the progress practice, reporting upwards is one thing. The other thing regarding progress is understanding tolerances. So tolerances is the permissible deviation around our targets. We could talk about tolerances of time and cost, but we can have tolerances around other areas such as quality, scope, risk. Well, each of the different levels of management will delegate tolerances downwards. So the business layer will delegate project tolerances to the project board. The project board can then delegate stage tolerances to the project manager. And the project manager is delegating work package tolerances down to the team manager. So all of these levels of management will then have the targets to work within, but also understand, is there any wiggle room around that? And at the right-hand side of the diagram, we can see the arrows going up. Team manager sending progress updates in a checkpoint report. And if there's any problems, that would go as an issue to project manager. Project managers are updating the project board via highlight reports. And if there's any problems with tolerances, they'd send an exception report immediately. Project board is working within those project tolerances, but needs to keep the business layer up to date with progress. And again, if there's any problems with tolerances, they'd send an exception report immediately. So as we are updating the staging control and the stage, getting progress updates coming from the team manager, as we're coming towards the end of one stage, we'd need to go into managing a stage boundary to plan the next stage. But before we take the stage plan to the project board in directing a project, we would also need to make sure we've got all the most up-to-date information possible. So we'd want to update the project plan with the progress that's been made. If the project plan has been amended, the time and cost information might have changed slightly. So we'd need to update the business case to make sure we've got continued business justification. And we'd also create an end stage report. So all of this is then presented to the project board in directing a project when we're asking them to authorise the next stage. If the project board says yes, then we're coming down into controlling the stage, managing that next stage plan, giving out work packages to the team manager in managing product delivery. Now, depending on how many stages our project has been broken down into, these processes that are highlighted at the moment would need to be repeated a number of times. Now, in controlling a stage, we're updating the stage plan. And if we are coming towards the end of the final stage, that's when we'd come across into closing a project, where we're going to confirm that the project has done everything it needed to do, but we'd also evaluate the project, create an end project report, a lessons report. and make sure that we've communicated that the project is closing and we've archived the project documentation. So the project manager formally closes down the project, but then hands over to the project board in directing a project to actually ask the project board to formally authorize the closure. And that's where the project board will then inform everyone the project is now closed. So hopefully that gave you a bit of an overview from the beginning to the end of our project using PRINCE2. Now, there are various different training courses and exams that are available. Now, let's talk exams first of all. There are 2 levels of exam for PRINCE2 Project Management. There is the Foundation and then Practitioner. The Foundation is all multiple choice questions. There's 60 questions altogether, and there's 60 minutes, an hour to do the exam. That's the standard time. Some people might have extra time for their personal circumstances. The pass mark is 60%, which works out that we need 36 correct answers out of the 60. Now, Practitioner is the 2nd level of exam, and ideally we need to have done Foundation before Practitioner. There are various routes to get to Practitioner, but the best choice is to do Foundation first and then do Practitioner. Practitioner is still multiple choice questions, but it's a little bit different. It's based around a scenario. They give you the scenario as part of the PRINCE2 Project Management book. You have access to an ebook during the exam itself, and the scenarios are in there already. So the practitioner exam is made up of 70 questions. We've got 2.5 hours to do the exam. And again, the pass mark is 60%. So we need 42 correct answers out of the 70 questions. Now, as far as learning PRINCE2, there's various different ways of learning. We can do self-studying using e-learning, and that will step you through all the different aspects of PRINCE2. You could attend a virtual classroom, and this is a live classroom with a trainer and various other people where you will then be doing interactive learning with an actual trainer. Now, the live classroom is very much similar to a face-to-face classroom. So traditional classroom environment where you're all in the same room learning about PRINCE2. Or you can have a blended version of the above. So you might do some e-learning, you might do virtual, or you might do face-to-face classroom, but there can be a bit of a mixture between all of them. So for our final poll, I want to think about, open this one up, I want to think about what are the next steps for you from today. So is it that you are thinking about doing the learning up to foundation level around PRINCE2, or are you wanting to get to practitioner level? Are you updating your current qualification, or are you maybe looking at, well, what other project management qualifications are out there? Let's have a look. Okay. We've got 75% of you voted so far. I'll just give it a couple more seconds. Okay. So nearly 50% of you, 48% people are looking to do foundation, which is like the first step. 40% are thinking of going on to practitioner, and then some of you are looking at your current qualification or other project management. Okay, let me close that down. Now, the final part of today is doing a question and answer session. So we will be having a look at the questions that are coming through in the little chat box. So I will do my best to try and answer as many of these as I possibly can. So let's see what we've got already. Now, Etty will be able to deal with some of these in the background, such as that first question around the YouTube channel. I'm sure Etty can make sure that's made aware. What will the steps be different if a project manager, let me just open this one up, manage contractors to deliver a project? Well, PRINCE2 does think about different kind of environments. one of the management approaches we have is a commercial management approach. So that's understanding how the commercial relationship with contractors would actually be established and how that would work. But the contractor would be seen, I manage contractors to deliver a project. So when you are asking the contractor to go ahead with this particular project, it's a little bit like giving out that work package to the managing product delivery process, where they will then manage that on your behalf. Let me go back to now. I've just realised I was looking at the questions at the wrong side. First of all, let's go to the original questions that came through. Will the slideshow be shared? There's a recording of this that will be emailed. A few questions on that. I'm new to project management and I'm preparing for the PRINCE2 foundation exam. Good. But I'm finding it difficult to get started. I'm a visual learner and the book feels overwhelming. So I'm not sure what I should focus on. The sample questions also seem complicated and hard to understand. Do you have any tips for learning PRINCE2 in a simpler way? Absolutely, I do. Yes. If you are a visual learner, in the PRINCE2 e-manual, in chapter 12, that's the overview part of the processes. So maybe draw out the processes, a bit like the diagram that we've used from start of a project across to closing project. So draw out an example of that. So you've got kind of like, it's a bit like a map then really, so you can see from beginning to end. With the practices, there's 7 practices altogether. And at the beginning of every practice in PRINCE2, it always starts out with a purpose, which is just 1 or 2 lines for most of them. I would suggest, again, get a sheet of paper and write down the purpose of each of the 7 practices and learn it word for word. Because often there are key words within there that you'll find it really helpful to associate back with that practice. Then do the same for the processes. Every process starts out with the purpose of that process. Again, most of the time it is just 1 paragraph. With starting up a project, there's 3 paragraphs, but focus on the first one of that would be plenty. But again, so 7 practices, 7 processes, learn the purpose of each of those, and having them, the kind of like map of the process diagram would be really helpful. On the ILX website, there's various things that you can download free of charge, and one of them is the process diagram. So I would recommend having a look at that. But good luck with your foundation exam. I hope that will help a little bit. Okay. Now then, let's have a look. What about not doing the training even via e-learning and just using the book to study when doing the exam? Well, everybody learns in different ways, and some people could read the book and learn absolutely from there. There's nothing to say that you can't do that. One of my things with just reading the book is that if there is something in there that you're not quite sure about, you don't have somebody to kind of like translate it into an example or into a different way of describing it. But there's nothing stopping you learning PRINCE2 from purely doing the book. Yeah. What else have we got in here? Thank you very much. Can we do practice exams? Yes, Sarah, you can do practice exams. There are 2 foundation exams that have been released from PeopleCert, who is the exam board, and there are also 2 practice exam papers for practitioner as well. If you are doing practitioner on a virtual classroom or face-to-face, then one of those sample papers you would actually work through with your trainer, and that would then leave another sample paper for you to practice on your own. All good, thank you. Any top tips for sitting the practitioner exam? Practitioner exam is like the 2nd level, so I would recommend doing foundation first. If it's a while since you've done your foundation, then maybe the advice I said earlier is about learning the purpose of the practices and the processes. Again, have a look at that. But with the practitioner exam, practice the exam questions, because getting familiar with the styles of questions is part of the practitioner exam, really. There are some questions which are generally referred to as like yes, no ones. So you'll have a question and 4 possible answers. With those style of questions, the beginning will start with either 2 of the answers will start with yes, 2 of the answers will start with no. It's important that you decide the yes or no first, and then read the statement that is supporting why you've said yes or why you've said no. So kind of break those answers down into 2 halves, really. Make sure you got the first half correct, and then look at the statement that's supporting your answer. You shared a slide in the beginning with people in the middle. Can you share this again, as I'd like to screenshot it? Absolutely. If I zoom back here, that was the 5 integrated elements. There we go. That's the 5 integrated elements of PRINCE2. So hopefully you'll be able to take your screenshot from that. Okay. Now then, going back to the questions. Is ILX the original creator of the PRINCE2 model, or are you a training partner approved to deliver the course? Well, that's an interesting question. ILX is an accredited training organisation, and anyone wanting to deliver PRINCE2 training has to be accredited with the exam board. Also, all of the trainers who are delivering PRINCE2 training have to be accredited as a trainer as well. So you can't just have anybody turn up and start teaching PRINCE2. ILX is a partner with people who own PRINCE2, and we do actually have a website of prince2.com that is also ILX as well. So we are very big players as far as PRINCE2 is concerned, but no, we was not the creators of it. Now then, let's have a look. Where did we get to? I saw the rest of the polls, just not the first one. The first poll, Sarah, was just asking where people's current knowledge is. So are they first into project management? Have you already got some qualifications? So it was just kind of helping me really understand what level people was at mainly. And most people, 75% of people came back as being new into project management. The costs of various qualifications. Unfortunately, I can't share the costs with you at the moment. If you go onto the ILX website, all of the prices are there. You can look at what courses are available and also the different formats of the course. And you can play around with that to actually see the variances of the different qualifications and the costings. What is the main difference between PRINCE2 qualification and an APM project qualification? Now, both PRINCE2 and APM project management are both recognised, very established qualifications, absolutely. PRINCE2, I think, gives us more of the structure, more of the foundations. It's kind of like the building blocks. So PRINCE2 is giving us this brilliant structure to understand one step at a time of how to manage a project. APM does talk about the structure, but not to the same degree. APM, though, gives us more description around some of the techniques of how to do things. So, for example, in PRINCE2, when it talks about the plans practice, it will talk you through the things that need to be in a plan, and it'll give you some guidance on what the plan format might look like. Whereas in APM, it goes into slightly more detail around doing critical path analysis and critical chain analysis. So it looks at slightly more techniques. My opinion is PRINCE2 is like I say, your foundations, it's your building blocks. If you then do APM as well, that's a great qualification to kind of sit on top, and they will complement each other. Can you provide the link to the e-manual? Now, when you book to do a foundation or a practitioner exam and course, you are then automatically given access on the PeopleCert website to the ebook. It's not open for general access. So once you've actually booked to do a course, then that is something that gets opened up. Thank you for your time as well. Need some guidance on learning to practitioner to schedule the foundation exam when learning to practicing scheduling foundation exam when ready. When it comes to scheduling your exams, because all of the exams are done online, then you can look at what time slots are available for the exam, so you can book it in when it's convenient for yourself. I would always recommend to do your exams close to the point where you're doing your learning, because while it's fresh in your mind, then do your exams. But those practice exam papers will give you an idea of whether you are ready as well. How long does the qualification last? Does it expire after a set period? So with the practitioner exams, they are valid for 3 years. However, how people work the recertification, PRINCE2 Project Management is actually part of like a PRINCE2 umbrella of different qualifications. And if you are doing studying on one of the other PRINCE2 qualifications, such as PRINCE2 Risk Management or Program Management, then that will refresh the actual expiry date of all of your qualifications. So if you do studying in a different subject, that will update your qualification renewal date. Yeah. Can you ask for support if you sign up for e-learning? Yes, you can. So myself and there's other trainers at ILX that do actually answer students' questions who are learning using the e-learning. So yes, you can email questions in, and then you do get a real trainer replying to you. Can you resit exams, or is it a one-time only? You can resit the exams. You can do the exams as many times as you want. However, every time an exam is used, the exam board charges for the exam. But yes, you can resit it if you need to. For the practitioner, do you need to learn any further content, or is it simply applying the principles further and better to just do the practice exams? You do learn the majority of PRINCE2 at foundation level. I would say at least 90+% you would learn at foundation level. A practitioner, the practitioner course gives us the opportunity to go back to the beginning and discuss the different areas again, knowing the bigger picture. When we are learning at a foundation level, we learn a subject, and then it's a case of like we put that to one side and then we learn the next subject and so on. So by the time we get to the end of the foundation learning, we will have covered everything. But then at practitioner, it allows us, like I said, to kind of go back to the beginning and see how this big picture all fits together. So even though you do the majority of learning at foundation, absolutely, practitioner gives you those connections a little bit more. There are various different entries into the practitioner level. The one that I would always recommend is to do the foundation course first. But again, if you have a look on the website, it will tell you a whole list of other prerequisites to do the practitioner exam. So there's various different things. Is the foundation an open or a closed book? Foundation, there you can't use any of your notes or your books or anything like that, so no, it is definitely a closed book exam. If closed, can you still have the processes printed out? No, you can't use anything in the foundation exam at all. Practitioner exam, you can use your ebook all the way through the exam, but no, for foundation you can't use anything. I've completed APM fundamentals. Is there a compare and a contrast of these two beginners courses, please? I'm not familiar with one specifically between those, but I am a trainer of both of those training courses, and your APM fundamentals and your PRINCE2 foundation are of a similar level. APM fundamentals has slightly different terminology for some things compared to PRINCE2, and again, PRINCE2 focuses more on the structure, whereas your APM, even at your fundamentals, it covers more of the technique side of doing things. Okay. Is it possible to send a PowerPoint slide so it's downloadable? Etty will hopefully respond to you on that one. What's the difference between PRINCE2 Project Management and PRINCE2 Agile? Now, one of the key differences, let me bring this back up. One of the key differences really with Agile is how the managing product delivery process works. So when we are giving out a work package to the delivery teams, how they actually do that work, standard PRINCE2 is kind of like, this is what we need, these are the parameters that needs to be worked within, let me know how it's going. Whereas with PRINCE2 Agile, they use time boxes and much more flexibility around the scope of what's being done. So the expertise at the team level is making more decisions around what's actually being done within that time box. Again, they complement each other absolutely. How far in advance do you need to book an exam? That really varies, to be honest, Sarah. On the PeopleCert website, it can vary from being able to book an exam within a day or so, and sometimes when they're really busy, it might be a couple of weeks or so, but it can vary. What happens if you fail the exam? Do you have to pay the whole course? If you're not successful in your exams, you can just resit the exam itself. You don't have to do the course again. Expressing the course. Good. Yeah, I was going to say, all of the trainers of PRINCE2, we all have lots of stories and lots of examples to kind of bring this alive a little bit. Are there any more sections, chapters of the course that you've not mentioned here today? For example, detailed budget, etc. PRINCE2 doesn't go into detailed budgeting. It does talk about needing a budget for the project, but it gives you kind of like the understanding of what's needed, but it doesn't dictate how you need to do certain things. Yeah. As far as, is there areas that we've not covered? We've covered the majority of things today, but we've not gone into detail around the people, and there's a big emphasis around the people side of things. Looking at the processes and the practices, there's a little bit more to what we've talked about on here today. Lots of thank yous coming through. Thank you very much. Can you do PRINCE2 Foundation and then after do PRINCE2 Agile? Absolutely you can. Yeah, that is one of the prerequisites. And I think, Etty, we've actually managed every question today. I've not intended to miss anybody's questions out, but I'd just like to say thank you for listening. Thanks for your questions and that you've come through. Hopefully that's been helpful for everybody. But if you are wanting to know more information, then please, if you go to the ILX website, it'll tell you all about the courses, what kind of formats, what to expect. Okay, so thank you for today. I'll hand you back to Etty.
Thanks very much, Karen. Yes, thanks everyone for all of your questions. We hope you found the session really useful. As Karen mentioned, if you do have any further questions or need any more information, there is loads of stuff over on our website, and you can also get in touch if need be. I do want to also say we do have a session coming up in a couple of weeks, similar to this one, but about PRINCE2 Agile. I know there were a couple of questions that came through about PRINCE2 Agile, so if any of you are interested in that, you can register for that webinar over on our website as well. Yeah, thank you very much, everyone, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your day.
Okay, thanks, everybody. Bye.